Good morning, y'all. Hope you're having a good morning so far. So in today's video, I want to share some thoughts with you all about what it means for people to connect in a healthy way. I feel like a lot of the advice we're given by friends and family about relationships, whether it's friendships or romantic relationships, is centered around the don'ts, or the bad signs of, you know, like these are the things to look out for, because these are flags, you know, red flags, meaning it's not going to work out, you know, or this person isn't right for you, or whatever it is. And so because I like to look at the bright side of things and the positive side, right, that's one part of my motivation for talking about healthy connections. But the other piece, we're going to get into it and expand on it more in just a minute, but it seems to be just not as popular for people to discuss the healthy points. You know, it's almost like I feel sometimes like we're wired to look for flaws. You know, it's like we have this innate tendency to want to point out the flaws and to lean more into, you know, judgment. And I think that sometimes we have to consciously recognize that within ourselves and work to shift that over into looking at relationships through this other lens. And the funny thing is, you know, when you consider just truth with regard to any particular topic, it can be found or gotten to, right? Either route you take, whether you come at it from the negative angle or the positive angle. So that's just an interesting side note there. But it throughout my life, it definitely seems like those people that I have sought advice from, they typically focus on the biggest factors to failure in a relationship, right? So today we're going to talk about the biggest factors to success. We're going to talk about, you know, both sides really, but we're going to be coming at it from a good angle. So I hope you enjoy the message today. If you think about it, having the ability to truly connect with another human being is powerful, because we all have bad experiences in our past. We all have old hurts and wounds, and these things affect us, right? And they kind of condition and recondition our mind to approach any new relationships, connections, partnerships with hesitancy. And sometimes I feel like we can undermine ourselves unconsciously, and then wind up, you know, realizing it and just being totally stuck in regret, and that's never a good place. But that's why it's so true in the Bible where it says, you know, that wisdom is the principal thing, and with all you're getting, get understanding. Well, that applies to understanding not only ourselves, but how we connect with one another too. It's going to mean all the difference in the world with regards to a successful relationship, right? So let's take a look at it. You know, as far as what makes a healthy connection, I personally believe the primary thing is shared values. And, you know, how many of us really took the time to ensure that our values were aligned with you know, each person in our life, you know, that's really heavily involved in our life, that we're really close to. And, you know, a lot of times we make our primary connections when we're somewhat young, you know, either a child or a young adult. And it's so interesting because, you know, children can connect just regardless, right? Because there's not a lot of different points to disagree on and argue over and things like that. As adults, we tend to really get hooked into and identify with all these different, you know, labels and perspectives and paradigms, and then it's like we take everything so personal. We wind up, you know, butting heads over it. So it's just beautiful to see how children connect, you know. But even when you connect with people, like for example, when you're dating, you know, when you're a young adult, it's you know, I feel like a lot of us just really didn't learn exactly, you know, first of all, how to identify our values, and therefore how to seek those in another. Even though we may have been living by the values, and we did have values, to be able to put them into definitions and a list or whatever, and comprehend them in that way, so that it sort of serves as like these literal guidelines we can go by. I feel like a lot of us weren't taught that, and so again, it's kind of like we're feeling our way in the dark, through the dark, and it's hard, you know, to figure these things out on our own, because when you have to figure things out on your own, it means there's a lot of mistakes that have to be made, unfortunately. But shared values is really crucial. And so, you know, let me give you an example of, you know, maybe you did have parents or grandparents, or, you know, aunts or uncles, or some type of elders in your life that taught you, you know, as a young adult, hey, here's the kind of stuff you want to look out for in a partner, and here's the stuff, you know, you really want to run from, or whatever. But for a lot of us, it was very basic. And so here's my example. You know, they may have said, you know, make sure that they don't lie. You know, you don't want to be with somebody who lies. And the issue with that is, what does that mean? I hate to say that. Like, I know what it means to me, but when you're young and you're just totally naive and trusting, and you don't really understand the depth of things, it's kind of like, okay, well, yeah, I'm an honest person. Yeah, I should definitely look out for that in another person. And that's the extent of it. And we don't really understand what that means, and all the different aspects of what that means, right? So, like, as an example, if you don't know, with some people, this is so sad, but it's true. I'm sure you've probably experienced this. With some people, literally, if you don't know how, or I'm sorry, if you don't know to ask a particular, very specific question, then you'll never find out about that thing. And that's like a little, what do you call that? Not a caveat, but like a loophole, I guess, or something, where dishonest people, and that's putting it nicely, liars, deceivers, manipulators, that's a loophole that they try to use. They're like, oh, well, and it may be something really important that would have, you know, made all the difference in you deciding to pursue a relationship with them versus not. And they could be like, well, you never asked me. I didn't know it would matter. And you're thinking, it would matter to anybody. That's a big deal, or, you know, at least something we should have talked about, or whatever. See, so, you know, again, when you're giving advice as a young adult, and it's like, you know, hey, just, you know, make sure they don't lie. Well, that's, you know, you may not know what all that encompasses, right? So, and, you know, one way in that example I gave you that this kind of thing can turn out, if you just didn't know how to ask a particular question, you might find out about whatever this is through a mutual connection, right? And then you wind up getting really upset about it. And that brings up another point. This is why a lot of times people who are living in deception, they want to limit your exposure to their friends and family greatly, because they don't want these particular stories from their past or whatever coming out. They don't want you to find out. And so just another little tip, you know, something to look out for. But essentially, you know, other things to look out for is, you know, does their presence lift you up or tear you down energetically, emotionally? Because even without knowing specific logical, you know, data points, you can at the least just kind of gauge your vibe and their vibe. And, you know, are they irritating your spirit? You know, are you walking away from your time spent with this person that you're getting to know, and maybe you're, you know, it's a developing friendship or whatever it is? Are you walking away from that time with them just feeling agitated, you know, energetically? Or do you feel, you know, inspired? and lifted up and encouraged and at peace. So that's one of the easiest ways to get in touch with your intuition, is just getting still. Just like that Bible verse, which I love, you know, that says to be still and know that I am God. I definitely relate that as well, to, you know, be still and listen to, you know, the great I am within you, the Holy Spirit inside of you, because it can speak to us energetically. And so I feel like it's kind of just an instinctive thing that our bodies, just like the dogs who have their hair, you know, stand up on their back when they sense danger, it's kind of like that with us. It's like energetically we can feel this, you know, just uncomfortable agitation, but our brains haven't, you know, caught up to something yet. And it's not necessarily that we should blame our brains. It may just be that there's literally information being withheld from us, you know, from these people, from these liars. So definitely tune into that for sure. And that brings me to another point, which I call proactive transparency. I can look back over my life, you know, over all the different, you know, friends I've had, you know, at all the different jobs, and, you know, in school and college, and, you know, the people I've dated, and just all the people I've known. And I can honestly say that it's very rare, in my experience, to connect with a person who just puts it all out there, just open, totally open, to the degree that you truly don't even have concerns about this person hiding anything from you, because they're that transparent. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. And, you know, if you kind of have that tendency as well to live your life, you know, as an open book, while I think it's really honorable and beautiful, you know, I've come to a certain place in my life where I understand that, you know, that could be sort of like casting your pearls, you know, just out to everybody and anybody, depending on, like, you know, your exposure to the public, I guess. You have to be careful, because people will take just anything about your personal life and use that against you. So I just kind of caution you there. But once you know, feel comfortable with a person, and, you know, they've proven that they are a true and honest person and they're trustworthy, at that point, then you know, for a person to be proactively transparent, that's a wonderful thing. So that's just something to look out for, as well as to notice if this new connection does not censor themselves around you. That's good, because covert narcissists, people with bad intentions, the wolves in sheep's clothing, they do censor themselves, because they're trying to hide so much. They're trying to hide their true self, their true motives, maybe a double life they're living, their lies, whatever it is. They have a lot to hide, right? Tons of skeletons in their closet, whatever. And so they don't want to have any slip-ups, see? So they're very controlled, extremely controlled. So, I mean, really to the point that they're robotic. I've heard many other people describe them on different, you know, channels relating to narcissism as robots, you know, just so rigid. And that's why I have learned. It's because their mask is just hiding. There's so much that's behind it that they can't risk relaxing, just kind of like a normal person, to just relax and just have a conversation that flows naturally. They can't do that because something might slip out. So that's what I mean when I say they're so controlled. So just look for that in a person. I know I will from now on, because sometimes we can mistake that presence, you know, when really it truly is them being very careful and controlled. Sometimes we can mistake that for maturity and seriousness and professionalism or whatever, saying, when in reality it's just what I shared. So yeah, and kind of in relation to that, when I'm talking about, you know, looking for people who don't censor themselves around you, I'm wearing my pumpkin, I don't know if you guys can see, my pumpkin spice shirt today. And you know, I was thinking about this earlier as I was having this idea come to mind about my video, you know, spice. and having spice in your personality, you know, just flavor, you know, being able to, you know, just kind of have some humor, sense of humor, and joke around, and, you know, literally kind of be able to wear your emotions on your sleeve, so to speak. You know, that's part of that that type of person that you're looking for a friend or a partner that doesn't censor themselves. You know, in other words, do they act naturally? You know, can they feel their feelings in front of you? You know, just all those kind of things. Their personality, is it rigid, or is it just free flowing? And do they have a little spice in their personality? You know, or is it just totally controlled? Okay, robotic. So I looked up the word to connect on the online etymology dictionary, the verb, and from the mid 15th century it says to join, bind, or fasten together. So I want to read to you Mark chapter 10 verse 9 says, "What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder," or let not man separate, right? So what's interesting here, the key point of that verse is it says what God has put together, right? Not what we put together, because we're totally not consulting the higher power, you know, in our arrogance or whatever. So when you bring God into the equation, everything changes. Everything changes. So I found that really interesting. Again, the definition of connect is to join, bind, or fasten together. And then, of course, so this is very related to connection, right? To me, when I look at that verse, I feel like it refers not only to his will for two people to walk the path together, you know, as friends, or to be together as partners, but I think it also is related to God's Spirit, sharing in God's Spirit as the main core value. It's kind of like when I say walking the path together, it's like sharing in that same Spirit. You know, you don't have to have every single thing in common. You still have your individuality. You don't lose that, but because that would be enmeshment, you know, and that's not healthy. But when you're sharing in that Spirit, you're just automatically going to have those. You're going to share those same core set of values. It's just going to be natural for you because you're walking in that Spirit together. So there's really no effort there. You know, you're still not going to be a perfect person, but it's just going to, I feel like things are going to be easier to work through, and all the obstacles that come along, you know, you're going to be able to overcome them a lot easier because you're walking in that Spirit together, right? And you know, I was talking earlier about getting advice from elders. I just want to caution you, if you're a young person watching this, you know, I understand it's honorable for people to be committed and to stay together, you know, a very, very long time, but you have to look, before you take advice from someone like an elder, I would just encourage you to look at the state of their relationship. And sometimes you can't really know that either. Sometimes collectively, the both of them will wear a mask to the public and bicker like crazy behind closed doors. You really never know, but all you can go on is what you see. And if you can see that these people never smile or laugh, or, you know, they're just they look totally miserable, I don't know that I'd be taking advice from them. So I just want to put that out there, right? It's kind of like these people just have, what's the word I'm looking for? Not resumed, but they have, I'll put it down here if I can think of it. But they've just kind of just gotten comfortable with their misery, I guess is the best way I can say that, even though ideally there's this particular word I can't think of. But in other words, it's like they just keep going. They keep going even though they're miserable. They just keep swimming, you know, despite the fact that they would probably be a lot better off apart. Now, that being said, and I think, let me just, before I go on, I think people do that. I think people stay and just keep going in a relationship that's not fruitful, that's not healthy, because they don't have the tools to fix the issues. They just don't. Again, that's why wisdom is the principal thing. You know, it's so important. One piece of advice that I received from an elder that was just golden, and I want to share with you all, which was, they said, don't expect everything you need in a relationship to come from one person. Now, I believe in commitment, in monogamy. I think it's called monogamy. If it's not, I'll have to edit this out and fix it, but pretty sure that's the right term. I believe in that. And so, when I say this, you know, I'm not talking about like that kind of stuff. What I'm talking about is the advice I got from this lady was, you know, sometimes we just expect too much out of our partner. And if we just were connected more with our community, or we, you know, had just a few trusted friends, it's kind of like, then, you know, we can kind of be nourished and filled through those relationships with those people in these other aspects. You know, maybe your partner, you know, is normally you can share a lot of humor with them, but maybe they're going through something right now. So instead of that coming, you know, to a head, and it's like you're you know, fighting over that, and it just turns really sour, you can just turn to, you know, your friends over here and like, well, I know this person, they really love to sit down and just share some laughs with me, so I'm going to do that over here, and then over here, you know, I'm going to, so it's kind of like, you know, having that sense of community is so important. It's so important, and understanding that, you know, everybody's human. We all have faults and flaws, and just, you know, staying realistic with our expectations with regards to a life partner or spouse in particular. It's just so important. And so on that note, you know, I feel like our culture really primes us for misperception and unrealistic expectations. I really do. And then what happens is, it's all like on a subconscious level too. We wind up assuming or adopting these paradigms, and they work against us. So here, let me give you an example. So fairy tales, you know, like in the Disney movies and stuff, a lot of times they're taken literally as an example, like a idealized love story. And you know, when really you can look at them as, you know, symbolism for all these other aspects of our reality and just our life experience, right? But when you look at those examples, those fairy tale love stories, as, you know, the bar of what to expect, well, it's not realistic. That's kind of the stuff I mean. And then when I'm talking about community, I'll share this. My great-grandmother said that, you know, the community used to be very strong. The neighbors would all get together, and they would take turns at, you know, different neighbor's house, and they would all cook together and have piano parties, and they would play, you know, the piano, and they would all sing together. And I just thought that was beautiful. And, you know, in our modern culture, obviously it's kind of the opposite of that. That's what we've moved to, right? Just living so focused on our individuality. And, you know, if you think about older cultures, they focused on the tribe as a whole, and also each person's place in the tribe. So this is something else to think about, right? Because when you have like a tribe type culture, and every person has their place, and there's this strong sense of community within this tribe, then another benefit is that, like, everybody is held to, you know, high standards, because each member of the tribe holds one another responsible. It's kind of like iron sharpening iron within this community. So that's kind of cool, you know, and we've gotten totally away from that way of living in our civilization, right? Our modern culture. Going back to our modern culture priming us for misperceptions and unrealistic expectations, you know, think about the lyrics in our modern music. You know, it's like, it really wasn't until I became a parent that I realized, you know, just how bizarre some of these lyrics are. And, you know, you realize you really have to protect your children from this stuff, because it does influence them, and it certainly will affect their relationships. and there are misperceptions and perceptions and expectations of connecting with others. And so all this matters, you know. I also feel like there's this overarching collective sense of selfishness that's very pervasive in our modern society. And I think that just kind of goes hand in hand with living more separated from one another in isolation. Just it's almost like the individual has become glorified, and through all these different avenues of stuff that we've experienced, and just convenience, you might say, and all kind of different reasons and different routes, you know, that have, everything's culminated down to this, I feel like, right? And it just results in selfishness. So just to kind of sum that part up of the message, essentially, it's like modern society seems very out of balance to me. And that certainly affects our relationships and the way we connect with one another. So, what's interesting is we normalize all this and don't recognize it as out of balance, because it all comes down to perspective and contrast. You know, because if we look at what's documented about our history, like especially our ancient history, people seemed barbaric, you know, like human sacrifices and all this other stuff. But it's kind of like, I like to question things. And so, you know, it's also said that they were totally primitive and not advanced whatsoever, and yet there's evidence of these ancient airstrips and things like this. Possibly different methods of clean energy that was used way back in the distant past. So, you know, you have to kind of question some of those things, but perspective plays a big part into what we accept as, you know, this is the right way to live, or this is good and that's bad, when, you know, you have to kind of expand yourself there to really find the truth. So let me share this. In one sense, this modern normalization of reclusiveness or individuality may wind up serving us very well, because it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to connect, not just to the Holy Spirit, to God, but to others through the Holy Spirit. When you come out of a community environment and you're isolated, then you're brought face to face within this experience to that verse, the Bible verse that says to be still and know that I am God. You know, it's kind of like we're forced to be still, because that's just kind of the norm for our society today. And it's hard. It's hard sometimes, you know, to be isolated. I'm thinking about the past few years and how things have been, and you know, how we've kind of had to be isolated from one another to a certain degree. But you know, if you look at it, you can realize it goes back to that Bible verse too that says, you know, all things are used. God uses all things for the good of those who love him, right? So I view it like an opportunity. And so even though sometimes we may feel alone, and that may seem to be just the standard in our modern culture, to just be totally separated and for there not to be much community or sense of a community, it's that opportunity to connect, you know, to the divine. And then through that, you can connect with others. And so it sort of realigns you. It gets you away from the people that maybe you weren't meant to be around or with. And it realigns you to being connected to those that, you know, are really, you're meant to walk the path with, either via friendship or more. That's how I view it. So, you know, we all reach thresholds. I like to say thresholds. It's like the evolution of our culture is bringing us to another threshold. So let's take a look at the definition of that, okay? It means the magnitude or intensity that must be exceeded for a certain reaction, phenomenon, result, or condition to occur or be manifested. So through faith, we may consider that collectively we may be experiencing Romans 8:28, which is God uses all things for the good of those who love him, right? And so it's kind of like the bad stuff sometimes has to happen. I'm reminded of Forrest Gump when he made that that shirt, because he was running and he went through mud, I think. And so he wound up, you know, getting the mud off of his face. It made a smiley face, and then this other guy was inspired to make t-shirts. And I don't know, there was, in the end, there was like the slogan that, you know, it was like, it happens, right? It happens. It's kind of like that has to happen for a shift to happen. We have to go through the mud and the muck and the hard times for there to be a shift, which is, you know, right in alignment with the definition of threshold. You know, that's why I use that term. So it's kind of like a pendulum. It's like, you know, I feel like sometimes collectively we you know, swing this way and get too far from God, which is, you know, in the spirit, the shared spirit of love really is the only true, good, right way to connect with others. And so when we get too far away from that, it's kind of like, you know, something has to happen, or a lot of things have to happen. And it's painful. There's a falling away of the things that don't belong to us, that we don't belong to. There's a falling away. And so it's painful. And in the end, really, if you think about it, the journey is an individual one. It's like you can't force another person to do anything. You know, not that you would want to anyway, but you can't force someone to not lie to you. They're going to do it if they want to, no matter what. You can't force another person to be faithful and monogamous, to be proactively transparent, to want to self-evaluate and learn and grow, and to change for the better. You just can't. It's got to come from their own gumption, their own initiative, right? And so that's what I mean when I say the journey is truly an individual one for each one of us, right? So when your path is one of integrity and honesty and wanting to self-evaluate and learn and grow, right, and change for the better continually, when that's your path, the good news is you find others who share that path, right? And it's sort of like coming into that spirit together, and somehow this numinous aspect enters the equation and just kind of, you know, helps you to find your people, you know. And so I want to close with this question. What more could you ask for, right? So thank you so much for coming along to hear the message. I hope that it was good for you, beneficial. I hope it got the wheels turning, insightful, and I just hope that you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you again very soon.